Word that we all need to do, time that we all come through and make moves. No more days of doing nothing, no more watching from the side. There's a war between good and evil, it's time that you decide. When they got you in that crowd, do you bow or do you rise? Are you one of those who resists or who complies? No more time here for denial, no more swallowing their lies. No more fueling this monstrosity that preys on our demise. It's time we take this outside and open up our eyes, identify the strings and cut the ties.
I'm out here every day, going hard cause it's all I know. Ghost Rider, ask about me.
The plans for it were put into action, I guess, and I think like May of 1776, a couple months before Declaration. So that's that. And then, so here it says, do you know who controls our mass communications media? Practically all the movie lots in Hollywood are owned by Lehman, Kuhn, Loeb and Company, Goldman Sachs, and other international bankers. All the national radio and TV channels in the nation are owned and controlled by those same internationalist bankers. The same is true for every chain of metropolitan newspaper, magazine, press wire services such as Associated Press. Those companies are gone. The supposed heads of all those media are merely the fronts for the internationalist bankers, who in turn compose the hierarchy of the CFR, today's Illuminati in America. Go and look who runs the CFR today. Hillary Clinton and Dick Cheney are at the top of the list, and I think Obama is too. What they do, I think they're testing everyone out, all the presidents of the world that are in the New World Order, for 6 months. They put them as president of the CFR, I guess, to see how they'll do, see who their man will be. I don't fucking know why they do it, but yeah, Adam Weishaupt, blah blah blah. So 1785, this was all found out about and everything. They knew they were gonna get found out, so they had like a fucking backup plan, you know. So anyways, Bavarian government outlawed Illuminati and closed the lodges, blah blah blah. 1786, they published all the details of the conspiracy. English subtitle publication is The Original Writings of the Order and the Sect of the Illuminati. Copies of the entire conspiracy were sent to all heads of church and state in Europe. But it was actually the power of the Rothschilds was so great that this warning was ignored. Illuminati became a dirty word and went to the underground. Now, this is how they started taking over government. So by a ruse, the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo had been falsified. Rothschild spread a story that Napoleon had won bad battle. He had won the battle, which precipitated a terrific panic on the stock market in England and plummeted down to practically zero, and Rothschild bought up all the stocks for virtually nothing. So he pretty much bought fucking England for nothing. Because he had a fucking horse that was faster than the messenger. Now look, in the 1850s, Illuminati held a secret meeting in New York, which was addressed by a British illuminist named Wright. Those in attendance were told that the Illuminati was organizing to unite the nihilist and atheist groups with all other subversive groups into an international group to be known as communists. That was then the word communist first came into being, and it was intended to be the supreme weapon and scare word to terrify the whole world and drive the terrorized peoples into the Illuminati one world scheme. The scheme, communism, was to be used to enable the Illuminati to foment future wars and revolutions. Clinton Roosevelt, a direct ancestor of Franklin Roosevelt, Horace Greeley, and Charles Dana, foremost newspaper publishers of that time, were appointed to head the committee to raise funds for the new venture. Most funds were provided by the Rothschilds, and this fund was used to finance Karl Marx and Engels when they wrote Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto in Soho, England, and this clearly reveals that communism is not so-called ideology, but a secret weapon, a boogeyman word to serve the purpose of the Illuminati. So that's where the whole communism shit came from. And folks, I got news for you. They funded, everybody funded the Nazi movement. The Nazi movement was a beta test for the Illuminati to see how far they could take a one world dictatorship type government, to see what the reaction of the public would be with this kind of fucking mass exodus and fucking execution going on. That's all it was. It's the only reason they stopped Hitler, which they really didn't. They fucking let him get away. They helped him to get away. The fucking guy ended up living out the rest of his days in Argentina. He lived till he was like 90 years old. It's just a fact. Now listen, and these are all facts. Most of the fucking terrorism, like 95%, probably more than that, in history, has been done, has been manipulated, has been provocatored by these fucking guys. They're the ones that set all this shit up. Assassinations, fucking overthrowing governments, you fucking name it. Bombings, these guys. Now, the First World War was to be fought so as to enable the Illuminati to destroy Tsarism in Russia, as vowed by Rothschild after the Tsar had torpedoed his scheme at the Congress in Vienna, and to transform Russia into a stronghold of atheistic communism. The differences stirred up by agents of the Illuminati between the British and German empires were to be used to foment this war. After the war would be ended, communism was to be built up and used to destroy other governments and weaken religions. World War II, when and if necessary, was to be fomented by using the controversies between fascists and political Zionists. And here let it be noted that Hitler was financed by Krupp, the Warbirds, they all financed them. Slaughter was necessary in order to create worldwide hatred of the German people and thus bring about war against them. In short, this Second World War was to be fought to destroy Nazism and increase the power of political Zionism so that the State of Israel could be established in Palestine. During World War II, international communism was to be built up until it equaled the strength of that known United Christendom. When it reached that point, it was to be contained and kept in check until required for the final social cataclysm. As we know it, Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, blah blah blah, put exact policy into effect. Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, George Bush, etc. continued that same exact policy. World War III is to be fomented using the so-called controversies by the agents of the Illuminati operating under whatever new name, New World Order, that are now being stored up between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Muslim world. That war is to be directed in such a manner that all of the Islam and political Zionism will destroy each other, while at the same time the remaining nations, once more divided on this issue, will be forced to fight themselves into a state of complete exhaustion physically, mentally, spiritually, and economically. Albert Pike. Okay, Middle Parties designed to accomplish that satanic objective. Pike himself foretold all this in a statement he made to Mazzini on August 15, 1871. He stated that after World War III ended, those who will aspire to undisputed world domination will provoke the greatest social cataclysm the world has ever known. Quoting his own words taken from the letter he wrote to Mazzini, and which letter is now cataloged in a British museum, he said, "We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a great social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to all nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origins of savagery and most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the people will be forced to defend themselves against the world minority of the world revolutionaries, and will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitudes disillusioned with Christianity, whose spirits will be from that moment without direction and leadership, and anxious for an ideal, but without knowledge where to send its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer brought finally out into public view," which is where we are now. A manifestation which will result from a general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. When Mazzini died in 1872, Pike made another revolutionary leader named Adrian Lemmy a successor. And blah, blah, blah. And we are supposed to believe that the international bankers of today, like the money changers of Christ's day, are only the tools or agents of the great conspiracy, but actually they're the masterminds behind all the mass communications media, leading us into believing that communism is a movement of the so-called workers. The actual fact is that both British and American intelligence officers have authentic documentary evidence that international liberals operating through their international banking houses, particularly the House of Rothschild, has financed both sides of every war and revolution since 1776. Now, these are the assignments from Jacob Rothschild himself. 1. Most important, acquire control of America's money system. Done. 1913, Federal Reserve. Find desirable men who for a price would be willing to serve as stooges for the great conspiracy and promote them in high places in our... Those are your congressmen, your government, and okay. Find willing to serve as stooges. Okay, that's all Congress and all them are. That's why they're lemmings. They ain't gonna do a fucking thing. Create minority group strife throughout the nations, particularly between blacks and whites. Create a movement to destroy religion in the United States for Christianity to be the chief target. Now, under our Constitution, all control of our money system is vested solely in our Congress. Schiff's next important step was to seduce our Congress to betray that constitutional edict by surrendering that control to the hierarchy of the Illuminati's great conspiracy in order to legalize that surrender and thus make the people powerless to resist it. It would be necessary to have Congress enact special legislation. To accomplish that, Schiff would have to infiltrate stooges into both houses of Congress, stooges powerful enough to railroad Congress into passing such scrupulous who would sign that legislation into law. To accomplish that, he had to get control of either Republican or Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was the more vulnerable. It was the hungrier of the two parties, except for Grover Cleveland. The Democrats had been unable to land one of their men in the White House before the Civil War. There were two reasons for that. Poverty of the party, no money. There were considerably more Republican-minded voters than Democrats. Now, tell me if this one sounds familiar. In the main, the refugees streamed into New York, but the Schiff-Rothschild humanitarian communities found ways to shuffle many of them into other larger cities, such as Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit. All of them were quickly transformed into naturalized citizens and educated to register as Democrats. Thus, all of that so-called minority group became solid Democrat voter blocs in their communities, all controlled and maneuvered by their so-called benefactors, and shortly after the turn of the century, they became vital factors in the political life of our nation. Okay, do you fucking see? They bring, when they want something done, like take the guns, they bring these fuckers in and nationalize them, like Obama's doing now, and put them all over the country so there's no way to get them back, fucking track them down, and the next thing you know, they're voting 2 or 3 times for fucking Obama to take your guns. Hey, remember what I did for you guys? I got you in the country. You vote to take these guns. And they'll fucking do it.